Hello and welcome to this session. This is Farhat, in which we would look at gaining sufficient knowledge of the entity's business when we are conducting a review engagement. Now, in the prior session, we looked at the review engagement overall, and specifically we looked at establishing an understanding with the client, which we looked at number one. And what we said that review engagement provide limited assurance. Some sort of an assurance. It's called limited. Now, one word I did not use in the prior recording, limited, also called negative assurance. So whether we said negative or limited, it's the same thing. In this session, we will focus on how do we gain sufficient knowledge of the entity's business in order to, as an accountant, conduct that review engagement. And as I mentioned, we're going to have to look at all these steps, going from gaining sufficient knowledge to inquiries, analytical procedures, the tool, performing other necessary work, obtaining the client rep, then eventually, communicating the results in few sessions. So this is basically the roadmap. So at the end of this recording, I'm going to show you this one again. I'm going to say, see, we're done with number 2. The next we'll look at number 3 and number 4, which is the tools, inquiries, and analytical procedures. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, farhatlectures.com.
Hello, my name is Farhat. You are here because you are either an accounting student, a finance student, or someone who's studying for their CMA or CPA exam. Great, you are looking for some additional help, and we can help you. I strongly encourage you to visit my website, farhatlectures.com. I offer additional lectures, resources, including PowerPoint slides, multiple choice questions, in some circumstances, exercises, and true-false questions. Our material is aligned with your CPA review courses, with your CMA review courses, with your college courses. I offer a risk-free trial that you can try to find out whether my website can help you or not. If you find it helpful, you subscribe, you keep your subscription. If not, you cancel and your risk is free. If you like this recording, if you like my lectures, you would like what's on the website, give me a chance to help you with your college courses as well as professional certification. I hope to see you on the website.
Understanding the client industry to conduct a review engagement, just like you want to conduct a compilation or when you want to conduct an audit, you have to have the knowledge of the client industry and business operation. You have to know what business you are dealing with if you are conducting a review, if you are reviewing the financial statements. It's not the same level as an audit, but you have to have some understanding about the company, its industry-specific accounting principle, because if you want to report limited assurance on the financial statements, you have to understand what you are looking at. Now, just like an A compilation, you must be familiar with the accounting principle. You don't have to be an expert. Even if you don't know it, you can get that expertise. You have to be familiar with the accounting standard and the reporting standard used in that industry. If you lack this knowledge, well, you can hire someone to help you. You can take CPEs, you can take courses, but you have to be familiar before you start the work. It does not disqualify you if you don't know it, but you have to get the experience. Now, in the real world, when companies start to, let's assume in retail, let's assume they have 2-3 clients of retail, they will focus on that industry. Why? Because they have the expertise. It takes them less time. They understand the business better. They can provide value-added service to their clients. But let's assume a software company came along and said, we need a review. Well, if they don't have any prior clients, they would try to ask some of the staff, are you familiar with this? Can we assign you? What can we do to learn? They will take some CPE courses, continuous professional education, to get up to date. Okay, so the accountant are responsible for obtaining the necessary knowledge to perform the review in a complete fashion, competently as well. Understanding specific industry accounting treatment. You have to. Certain industries, they have unique financial reporting practices that differ from other accounting. For example, if you're looking at retail business, it's different than a construction company. A construction company, you have to be familiar with percentage of completion and the completed contract. I still remember when I was in practice, this is a real story. I spent one Saturday, just walked to the office, like spent 3 hours studying the percentage of completion and the completed contract method because I was not familiar. I was assigned to a construction company, and guess what? I needed to get up to date on this. So what I did on Saturday, I asked my manager if I can go into the office and look at the prior year work paper. Said, yeah, go ahead, it's your time. So I went in there and I learned, the percentage of completion and the completed method from an actual practical perspective. So you need to familiarize yourself. Now, the senior accountant knew what was happening, but I needed to know myself. So you have to familiarize yourself how you would do it. Well, you can do it individually. The company will do it overall, depending on what's needed. But the point is, you have to be familiar with the accounting standard and the reporting for that industry. You also have to understand the client. So you understand the industry, then you have to understand the business itself, the client's business. So in addition to the industry knowledge, you must develop an understanding of the specific client business operation. This would include what? Understanding their corporate structure. Are they sole proprietor or not corporate? Their structure, their business structure. Are they sole proprietorship? Is it a partnership? Is it a corporation? Who's in charge? So on and so forth. The key operating characteristic, how the company generate revenue, how do they record expenses, especially if the revenue is, percentage of completion, how do they do that? The nature and elements of the financial statements. You have to understand what assets do they have, inventory, receivable, construction, equipment, so on and so forth. Liabilities, loans, how many loans do they have? Do they have accounts payable? Do they have accrued expenses? Common stock, retained earnings, owner's capital, revenue source, how do they generate the revenues, their expenses, cost of goods sold, salaries, rent, advertisement, what's their major categories of expenses, and how do they account for those. So you have to understand the industry, then you have to drill down to the business. Again, a year later, if you have to do this again, or sometimes reviews, we used to do them quarterly. By the third quarter, you become an expert. A year later, you're just like, you can do this in your sleep, assuming it's the same company, right? If it's a new company, then you have to study the whole thing again. So for example, a CPA conducting a review for a software company should understand the client revenue model, whether income is generated from software licenses, subscription, or consulting services. How do you generate your revenue? If the business offer multi-year software contract, you should be familiar with revenue recognition standard ISC 606 to assess whether financial reporting is to assess whether the financial reporting is appropriate. What's not required in a review is important as well. What you don't have to do, because some of the questions will be, is this required? What's required is understanding the business, understanding the industry. What's not required is what? Testing the control. You don't have to test the control. The accountant does not evaluate or test the effectiveness of the internal control. The review focuses on inquiries and analytical procedures. So once you say reviews, just kind of think of those two things. And you're going to have a whole session about them next. We're going to see what they are. No substantive testing. You don't examine invoices, confirm balances, inspect asset, none of that. You're not doing any verification. The review relies on management representation and financial data analysis. You're going to analyze financial data. You're going to see how, rather than verification like an audit. You don't verify. You don't assess the fraud risk. Unlike an audit, a review does not include formal fraud risk assessment. The accountant is not required to design procedures to detect material misstatement due to fraud or non-compliance. If they want that, then they have to go for a audit. However, if a fraud or legal violation become apparent, like you stumble upon it, you just found it by mistake, well, you have to consider how these issues affect the financial statements and discuss the matter with management to determine if there's any necessary financial statement adjustment are required. Okay. But let's take a look at this multiple choice question from Farhat Lectures. And I put this question on purpose here because at the beginning I mentioned this topic. An accountant states the following in his report: we are not aware of any material modification that should be made to the accompanying financial statements. Which of the following is being expressed by the accountant? Is it unmodified opinion, disclaimer, negative confirmation, negative assurance? Now, this opinion is limited assurance, but we don't have limited assurance. Another term for limited assurance is negative assurance. So be careful, don't put negative confirmation. That's something we learn about in account receivable. Sometimes we do send negative confirmation. Disclaimer of opinion. We're disclaiming, we're not saying anything. Unmodified opinion is a clean opinion. That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with negative assurance or limited assurance. We are not aware of any material modification. This is a review and it's limited or negative assurance. Now, as I told you from the beginning, what we do is we looked at establishing an understanding with the client. We gain sufficient, what do we need to do to start the work, gain sufficient knowledge of the entity's industry and business. Then next, what we do is we collect evidence using inquiries and analytical procedures. In the next session, we would look at those two topics. What should you do? You want to go to Farhat Lectures, keep your Windows recording, taking the multiple choice. The best investment you can make, whether you are an accounting student or a CPA exam candidate, is investing in yourself. Good luck, study hard, and of course, stay safe.